So, this story was sent in by a listener who took a trip to Charleston, South Carolina last summer. What was supposed to be a fun weekend reunion with an old friend turned into something they still can't explain. And honestly, after reading what happened to them, I wouldn't want to go back to that city either. Here's their story. This happened during the July 4th weekend of 2025. I had driven up from Florida to Charleston to visit a close friend I hadn't seen in years. It was one of those trips you plan months in advance, you know? We were both excited. Charleston's a beautiful city. Historic buildings, cobblestone streets, waterfront views. And during a holiday weekend, it's packed with tourists. We spent the first day just walking around, checking out shops, eating at local restaurants. The weather was hot and humid, typical for South Carolina in July, but the energy of the city made it bearable. Everything felt normal. Until we saw him. We were walking near the waterfront district, probably around 3 in the afternoon. The sidewalks were crowded with families, couples taking photos, street performers playing music. That's when I noticed the man. He was walking toward us on the same side of the street, and immediately, something felt off. He was wearing a wedding suit, not a casual blazer or dress shirt, a full wedding suit. White, perfectly pressed, like he'd just stepped out of a ceremony. But that wasn't even the weird part. It was the way he was moving. He was walking slowly, too slowly. Like every step required concentration. His arms hung limply at his sides. His face was completely blank, no expression, just staring straight ahead as he shuffled forward through the crowd. My friend noticed him too. We both slowed down without saying anything, and instead of crossing toward him, we stayed on our side of the street. As he passed us, I glanced back. He just kept walking, same slow pace. Same empty stare. People moved around him like he wasn't even there. That was weird, right? My friend said. Yeah, I said. Really weird. We didn't talk about it much after that. Tried to brush it off. Charleston's a touristy city. Maybe he was part of an event or a street performer. Or, I don't know. We came up with excuses and kept walking. A few hours later, we were on the other side of the city. We'd walked at least 2 miles, maybe more, through different neighborhoods. We stopped at a cafe near the market district to grab iced coffee. That's when I saw him again. Same man, same wedding suit, same slow, unnatural walk. My stomach dropped. Is that? My friend trailed off, staring. Yeah. We watched him shuffle past the cafe window. He didn't look at us, didn't look at anyone, just kept moving in that same robotic way, like he was on autopilot. There was no way he could have gotten here that fast, not moving the way he was. And why would someone wander around Charleston for hours in a full wedding suit in the middle of July? Maybe there's more than one person dressed like that, my friend suggested. Like a themed wedding party? But we both knew that didn't make sense. It was the same guy, same face, same build, same suit. We left the cafe and tried to enjoy the rest of the day, but I couldn't shake the image of him from my mind. The next night, we decided to do one of those ghost tours. You know, the walking tours where a guide takes you through the historic parts of the city and tells creepy stories about hauntings and history. It seemed fitting for Charleston. It was late, probably close to 10 p.m., and our group was walking through a crowded square downtown. There were maybe 15 people in our tour group, plus random tourists and locals passing through. I was listening to the guide talk about some old Civil War story when I felt it. That same feeling from the day before, like something was wrong. I looked around, and there he was, standing in the middle of the square, completely still, surrounded by people rushing past him in every direction, but no one was reacting to him. People walked right past him, some even brushing his shoulder, but no one turned to look. No one seemed to notice him at all, except me and my friend. I grabbed my friend's arm. "Do you see him?" They followed my gaze and went pale. Oh my God. We both just stood there, frozen, while the rest of our tour group moved ahead. The man in the wedding suit stood motionless in the crowd, arms at his sides, staring straight ahead. And then he turned his head slowly and looked directly at us. His eyes locked onto mine for what felt like forever, but was probably only a second or two. They were completely empty, hollow, like there was nothing behind them. Then he turned his head back and continued staring into the crowd. "We need to go," my friend whispered. We didn't wait for the tour to finish. We just left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was staying in my friend's guest room on the first floor. It had a window that faced a narrow alley between their building and the one next door. The room was dark, except for a sliver of streetlight coming through the curtains. I kept replaying the image of that man's face, his empty eyes. Eventually, exhaustion won, and I drifted off. I don't know what time it was when I woke up, but I woke up suddenly, the way you do when something jolts you awake. My heart was already pounding before I even opened my eyes. Then I heard it. Tap. On the window. Tap. 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 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the glass. I didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed at me not to look. But I did. I turned my head toward the window. At first, all I could see was darkness. The alley was barely lit. But then, at the far end, I saw movement. A tall figure in white, standing there, watching. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out the shape of the suit, the unnatural stillness of the body. And then, slowly, the figure turned and walked around the corner, out of sight. I didn't move for a full minute, maybe longer. I just lay there, staring at the window, heart hammering in my chest. When I finally got the courage to check, the alley was empty. But I knew what I saw. It was him, the man in the wedding suit. He'd followed us, found where I was staying, and he'd knocked on my window in the middle of the night. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in the living room with all the lights on until sunrise. The next morning, I told my friend everything. We packed up and left Charleston that day, earlier than we'd planned. I still don't know who that man was, or what he was. I don't know why he kept appearing wherever we went. And I don't know what he wanted. But I know one thing. He was watching us. And I'm never going back to Charleston. This story comes from someone who lives alone in a quiet suburban neighborhood. They thought they were safe. They thought their home was their sanctuary. But what happened to them last winter is something that still keeps them up at night. And honestly, after hearing what they went through, I don't blame them. This is their story. I live alone. I've been living alone for about 3 years now. It's a small 2-story house in a pretty quiet neighborhood, The kind of place where people know their neighbors, where you hear kids playing outside in the afternoon, where nothing really happens. I work a regular 9 to 5 job, come home, make dinner, watch TV, go to bed. Pretty standard routine. I'd always felt safe in my house, never had any problems, never felt the need to double-check the locks or install a security system. Looking back now, I wish I had. This all started last winter, December, I think. The days were short, it got dark early, and I was spending a lot of time inside because of the cold. At first, it was just small things. Things I'd notice but wouldn't really think twice about. One morning, I was leaving for work and I grabbed the front door handle. It felt loose, like someone had been messing with it. I jiggled it a few times, tightened the screws, and went to work. Didn't think much of it. A few days later, I came home after dark and noticed my porch light was off. I always leave my porch light on when I leave the house. It's automatic for me. But that night, it was off. I figured maybe the bulb had burned out, so I flipped the switch inside, and it turned on just fine. The bulb was fine. Someone had turned it off. Then one morning, I woke up and my phone was completely dead. The charger was unplugged from the wall, just lying on my nightstand. I know I plugged it in before I went to sleep. I do it every single night. But somehow, while I was sleeping, it had been unplugged. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I hadn't plugged it in all the way. Maybe it fell out. But deep down, something felt wrong. A week later, I came home from work and took off my shoes at the door like I always do. That's when I noticed something on the floor. Muddy footprints leading from my back door into my hallway. My heart started racing. I looked down at my own shoes. They were clean. These weren't my footprints. I slowly walked through my house, checking every room, every closet, behind every door. Nothing. No one was there. But those footprints were real. Someone had been inside my house. I checked the back door. It was locked. I didn't call the police. I don't know why. I guess I didn't want to seem paranoid. I convinced myself maybe I'd tracked in mud earlier in the week and just didn't notice, even though I knew that wasn't true. A few nights later, I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone before going to sleep. The house was quiet. I was about to turn off my lamp when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. 3 soft knocks on my bedroom door. I froze. I live alone. "Hello?" I called out. My voice cracked. No response. I waited, listened. Nothing. I got out of bed and slowly opened the door. The hallway was dark and empty. I checked the bathroom, the spare bedroom. Nothing. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I went downstairs to make coffee. That's when I noticed the back door. It was unlocked. Not just unlocked, the deadbolt was turned from the inside. I know I locked it the night before. I check it every night before bed. It's part of my routine. Someone had unlocked it while I was sleeping. Two officers came to my house. I told them everything. The door handle, the porch light, the footprints, the knocking, the unlocked door. They walked through my house, checked all the windows, checked the basement. They found nothing. Sometimes houses settle, one officer said. Could have been the wind, could have been a loose latch. But I could tell they didn't really believe something was wrong. They thought I was just a paranoid person living alone. They left, and I felt stupid for calling. But that night, everything changed. I was sitting on my couch, watching TV around 10 p.m. when I heard a noise. A thud, coming from the basement. I muted the TV and listened. Silence. Then another thud, followed by a scraping sound, like something being dragged across concrete. My basement door was at the end of the hallway. I walked toward it slowly, my phone in my hand, ready to call 911. The door was open. I'd never leave that door open. I barely even go down there. I turned on the light at the top of the stairs and looked down. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the concrete floor, storage boxes, my water heater. But then, in the corner near the furnace, I saw it. The outline of a person, standing, completely still, in the shadows, watching me. I ran. I ran straight out my front door, into the street, and called 911. The police came back, this time with 3 cars. They went into the basement, and they found him. A man, hiding behind my furnace. He didn't resist, didn't say anything, just stood there while they handcuffed him and took him out. He was wearing dirty clothes, had a backpack. The officers found food wrappers, bottled water, a flashlight, and a phone charger in his bag. My phone charger. He'd been living in my basement for weeks. The police told me he'd been breaking in through a basement window that didn't latch properly. He'd been coming and going, eating my food, using my electricity, watching me. They arrested him, took him away, told me I was safe now. But 2 days later, I found something on my phone. I was scrolling through my photo gallery when I saw a picture I didn't recognize. It was a photo of me, sleeping in my bed, taken from the doorway of my bedroom. The timestamp said 3:11 a.m., from the night before the police found him. He'd been standing in my doorway, watching me sleep, and he took a picture. I moved out a week later. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. Every creak, every shadow, every sound made me panic. The police told me he's in custody, that he can't hurt me. But I still can't sleep through the night, because I keep thinking, how many nights did he stand there? How many times did he watch me? And if the police hadn't found him that night, what was he planning to do next? Last winter, I took a few days off work and decided to go camping alone with my dog, Roscoe. I had done solo camping before, and I enjoyed the isolation. No people, no noise, just trees, snow, and silence. I drove my truck deep into a state forest, following a narrow road that barely looked maintained. Snow covered everything, and there were no other cars anywhere. After nearly an hour, I parked at a small pull-off that looked like it hadn't been used in years. From there, I hiked another 20 minutes into the woods. I eventually reached a small clearing surrounded by thick trees. The snow was completely untouched, no footprints, No trails, no signs anyone had been there recently. That was exactly what I wanted. I set up my tent, staked it down hard because the ground was frozen, and started a small fire. Roscoe stayed close, sniffing around, but never straying far. The woods were quiet in that deep winter way where sound feels like it doesn't travel at all. Snow absorbs noise. My dad taught me that when I was younger. While I was eating dinner by the fire, Roscoe suddenly stood up and started barking toward the trees. At first, I didn't worry. Deer were common out there. I told him to calm down, and after a minute, he did. About 20 minutes later, he barked again, louder this time. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps, crunching through the snow somewhere beyond the firelight. I stood up and listened. The steps stopped, then started again. Roscoe went from barking to growling. Then he went completely silent. That's when I saw him. A figure standing at the edge of the tree line, barely visible in the flickering light of the fire. I called out, saying he scared me, and telling Roscoe it was okay. The figure didn't respond. After a few seconds, he stepped forward just enough for me to see he was a man. He asked what I was doing this deep in the woods. His tone wasn't friendly. I told him I was camping. He stood there staring at me, saying nothing. I finally told him I was armed. He laughed. He said something about me being rude for threatening him instead of inviting him to join me. Then he turned and walked back into the darkness. I stood there long after he was gone. I put out the fire completely and crawled into my tent. Hours later, Roscoe started growling again. Footsteps. They stopped right outside the tent. Whoever it was stood there for a long time. When I finally shouted that I had a gun, the footsteps walked away.